Life. My name is Ken Burkey, and Lanise Hargett is again in the house helping us raise our children or grandchildren or those that we influence in great ways.
Yes.
So we're going to talk today about teaching our children a work ethic.
Yes.
So here's my question. Why is this important?
Well, you know, as parents, what we need to have for our children is perspective. We need to teach them to work, but that's within perspective of how old they are. And it's important because when you look at the word perspective, what does that mean? It means that we're looking at their life as an adult, even though they're children. So where are we going to take our kids on this journey of teaching them to work, with the goal being that as they're adults, they become hard workers. And it's not hard for them to get up and go make a living.
Because that is really ultimately our goal as parents, is to make our kids independent, productive adults.
That is our job. It is. And
it
so
really is.
Why is it important? It's important because it doesn't start in adulthood teaching somebody how to work. It starts in childhood. So that's why it's important to talk about it when you have children.
Well, it's important to talk about it too, to perspective, and because, you know, obviously child labor, can be abused on the other side too. It seems like you were talking before the show started about the pendulum. Talk about that.
Well, it's interesting because right now we are so, as a culture, protective of our children, which is so great. And some of that comes from the abuses that have happened with children. And today we're talking about work, so we'll just talk about that. We are doing a great job right now as a culture, just making sure with our child labor laws that our children are protected and that we don't, like as in other countries, have child labor.
Right.
And so that is an awesome thing that we do. We protect our children from that. And it's not an option or legal to employ young children.
Right.
But what does that mean as parents right now? The pendulum has swung. So we come from a place, we come from a place even in our culture where children did work all the time, and they did work and not get paid for it.
You experienced that.
And I did experience that. I was raised on a farm. I was raised in a community that farmed, and it wasn't unusual at all for me to get up at 5 in the morning or 4:30 in the morning and go move rain pipe, and then go to school and then come home and move rain pipe, or hoe weeds or pick corn or anything like that, work the tomato harvester. That wasn't unusual, and it wasn't unusual to not get paid for it.
Yeah.
That was just what was required. So, when we look at those extremes, and I'm the product of that extreme, there are great takeaways that we took away from that, being taught to work as a young child. There were also things that were detrimental because you can't get up at 4:30 in the morning and move rain pipe and then go to school and be productive in class.
Right.
Because as a child, you need much more rest than, getting them up at 4:30 in the morning. So we see that our, there are laws now that protect against that.
And so in other countries, obviously, there's horrible child labor issues in there, but in America, it seems like the pendulum has swung the other way, which the other way is?
Right now, we're looking at our children, and, they have become great at turning on the TV and opening a bag of chips, and that's considered,
That's not a life skill,
That's
really.
not a life skill.
Right,
It's not, and that is something that, through, as parents, the pendulum swinging, some of us do have those experiences where we did have to work super hard as children. And so we tend to indulge our children to say, oh, we don't want you participating in work. And so we see that that is extreme as well. And to be honest, work is not child abuse.
No.
It isn't. And so we really need to look at this idea of work with children and define, what does that mean? Child abuse is turning on the TV and opening a bag of chips as a lifestyle choice that for a child. That is child abuse. We are not serving our children. Teaching a child to finish a video game is not a skill that is admirable. Teaching a child to finish a chore, now that is something that's productive. And so we need to look at right now our culture, where we're at as parents, and actually start talking about what are we doing for our children? Where is this putting them in adulthood?
So what are some tools parents can be given in to help the balance, so to speak, to help that,
Well, I think parents need to know that work is good.
Yeah.
They first need to look at it and say, what do I want my child to end up being when they're an adult? And what everyone wants their child to be is independent and be able to take care of themselves as an adult. Not only that, is as parents, we don't want to be the people that are providing and feeding our grandchildren.
Right.
We want to be there to love and support and spoil, but we don't want to actually be feeding them.
Right.
So when we look at our children and how we're teaching them to work, we can look at the end product and say, I want you to be able to provide for your own.
Right.
So how does that start? What we all know from early childhood development is it starts early.
Yeah.
It starts super early. I just laugh all the time in our 2-year-old classroom at church because a lot of times children come in and they're not used to a structured setting. So they'll cry because their parents are leaving them, and their favorite distraction activity is water spray bottles on the table with paper towels. They take the spray bottles with water.
I still like that. That's still kind of fun.
Super fun. They spray the table and they clean it. It is their very favorite activity as a 2-year-old. So what we know from that, just one activity, is that a 2-year-old can clean the table after dinner.
Yeah.
And it's super fun. So when you look at families and say, you know what, you start super, super early with a 2-year-old in a spray bottle,
yeah.
and they are with their binky in their mouth having a blast at the table cleaning it, and they learn words like work and helping and participating, and you're a part of this family, and they learn that we're all doing something together, and it's actually fun.
Yeah, and it raises kind of your self-esteem. I make a difference. I'm helping.
It does.
Yeah.
And so, you know, those principles are hard to teach past 3rd grade.
Really?
Those are things that are instilled early on. When you teach your child at 2, you know what? You've made a huge mess on the floor, and it's a big, huge mess. You don't have to clean up the whole thing because we're going to do it together, but you will participate, and at the end you clap and say, bravo, you're so amazing. They have this sense of pride at 2 or 3 or 4 or 5. When they start getting into school and they haven't learned that sense of pride, working is drudgery.
Yeah.
It's not like a lifestyle. It's actually, you're going to make me do what?
Yeah.
As opposed to, well, of course I would do it. So those are things that, you know, parents, if you haven't taught your children to work, it's never too late. We always say it's never too late.
But it's best to start early.
But it's best to start early.
Go ahead. No, go ahead.
No, and I have to say that, you know, parents that model it, when you model, it's not just about modeling it, because dads and moms, I know you're awesome at getting to work, and it's super, you know, easy for you to get in the car and go to work. But when you take the time to explain and teach your child why we work, and a lot of that comes from money. Work equates money in adulthood.
Yeah.
It does. And even if you're working on your own home, it always equates money. And so when children can grow up and learn that work is fun when they're little, but as they get older, they'll understand, because you're teaching them with not only your actions, but your words, that when you work, you actually get compensated with money. And money is actually how we get all these things. Those principles are learned early on as well. But, you know, they need to be not just learned, but talked about and taught.
We'll talk about who can help us do that. You were talking about an author, and you know, how do we get tools to help our kids navigate this?
Well, Dave Ramsey right now has a financial class that we're actually doing at Green Valley Church.
Right.
And
it's phenomenal.
It is amazing.
Yeah.
And it not only teaches parents and anyone how to manage their money, it actually teaches principles that you can teach your kids on money. And it's basic principles that starts early.
Right.
You know, how do we get money?
Right.
Money is always acquired by working. You get compensated for your work. And actually, what do we do with it then? Yeah. Do we just have it to spend? How does that all work? And, you know, Dave Ramsey has some great, you can go on his website and learn some things. All of the material today are from Dave Ramsey's site with children. And so you can go online and look at that as well, and even take the class at church.
Yeah, talk about with kids, too, when they're learning that, what they're learning is consequences.
Yes.
But also the benefits to working, because they have this ability to spend if they have the money, but then it's important that parents allow the consequences to happen if they don't have the money.
Absolutely.
Talk about that a little bit.
Well, so many times as parents, we have to look at what our children's needs are and what their wants are. And I think as parents, we're kind of getting them mixed up.
Yeah.
You know, is a need really to have the latest iPod? Is that really important? Or the latest phone? And is that important?
It is to me, but my family won't let me get it, so they have good boundaries.
So if you don't have it and you're still living, that means it's not a need.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. I wouldn't know what to do with it anyway.
When you look at basic needs,
Right.
you know, it's food, clothing, and shelter. That's
Right.
their basic needs,
Right.
is what children's needs are, and those are getting distorted right now.
Absolutely.
And so when you look at that and say, okay, what are the consequences now? When children are entitled and you just give them all of their wants, because you haven't discerned what is a need and a want. What is that doing? What are the consequences of that? And what's the consequences are entitlement.
Yeah.
Children are growing up thinking that they get everything for free.
Right.
Why would I have to go work? Because you know what? It's just supposed to be handed to me. Well, of course I'm supposed to have the latest laptop. If my parents can't give it to me, of course the school should give it to me.
Right.
And that's a sense of entitlement that's really out of balance.
The other thing that I think is that our culture is the lack of delayed gratification.
Totally.
And I think you're talking about kind of the same thing.
It is. And you know, if you teach your kids 3 basic principles: to give, to save, and to spend, and you teach them when is it appropriate to do these 3 things with money, and that when I acquire things, when I decide, you know what, there are things that I'm going to want that aren't needs. As a young child, I'm going to have wants, and I don't want to wait for Christmas.
Right.
Then those wants can be, you can have them.
Right.
You can be rewarded for it. You're not going to get it first and then pay for it. You're actually going to, as you say, have delayed gratification and work for it first and then get it.
Well, studies actually show, you know, if you get everything right when you need it, or when you want it, I mean, it feels good for a moment, but then it's like a drug, and then it's gone. But they've actually done studies with delayed gratification. There's a greater joy.
Yeah.
There's a greater, and a lot of that has to do is if you've saved and then bought it at an appropriate time,
Right.
it feels better.
It does.
It feels like it doesn't own you, but it was an actual reward for working and
Yes.
for doing the thing in the right order.
Exactly. And you know, I think as parents, we say, you know what, our culture isn't the way it used to be. We don't live on farms anymore. We live in the city. What can we do to teach our kids to work? And how can we start fostering that we can teach our children to work and to actually have their own money and to purchase things on their own? And I just want to say, parents, I know it's hard. I know it's really hard, but there is a sense that when you look and you get perspective on what's important in your family, and this is an idea and this is a philosophy that you want to embrace in your family, you need to look at your community and say, where am I living? What am I doing? Who are the people in my life? And then start taking your children and saying, you know what, these are the people that are safe people in my life. These are the people you can work for. So what can you do? And so remember, parents, you have to be the judge and the discerner of your own children. I'm not here to tell you what you're supposed to be doing with your children. You have to figure that out for yourself. What's age appropriate for your children to do?
Right.
What can they actually do?
Right.
Can maybe your 5-year-old can rake leaves and earn $5 for an hour of work, or $4 or whatever it is. And another parent, you know, their child can't.
Yeah.
So you have to be that person that's discerning that. And you know, if you don't have people in your life that your children can shovel snow for or mow their lawn or babysit for, then you have to be that person that is setting up work for your children above and beyond what is naturally expected of them.
Right.
For example, cleaning your room is your responsibility and you don't get paid to clean your room.
Right. Yeah.
You're part of this family.
Right.
You have to be part of the work that goes on in this family to get things done. You're not going to get paid for the mess that you made to clean it up. So those are things that, you know, I think websites and different, you know, parent blogs can help you decide what's a good fit for your family.
I'll tell you too, again, just because we're very, you know, we're on point with Dave Ramsey right now. Every parent should go through, because the Dave Ramsey course, it helps you with your finances, but also he does a lot of equipping on how to help your kids with the the wants versus needs.
Yes.
And I like what you said, give, save, and then spend.
Yes.
And I've always told the story, my first job ever, I was 10, and it was a paper route. And it was 3 days a week, and getting up at 4 in the morning, folding papers and delivering papers. And my first paycheck was $40.
Right.
And so my mom said, well, the first $4 is your tithe, so we gave it to the church, and then we put savings away, and then I got fun money to spend, and it was fun. I mean, I went to 7-Eleven and bought Slurpee cups and everything like that, but it wasn't like, oh, it was just, they taught me some principles. I wasn't really happy with it at the time.
No.
But it was just became the norm.
Yes.
You give to God, then you save, and then you spend the rest.
Yes.
And that's not a culture we live in right now,
It
not even with
isn't.
us adults.
It isn't, and I just have to say, if we learn those principles as adults and then we share them with our children, we save our children an enormous amount of grief as adults.
Yeah, it's a gift.
It's a gift.
Yeah.
It really is, and as you said, suffering seems hard at the moment, and suffering for the child is, I don't get what I want right now with my own money, and they will give you so much pushback.
Right.
This is my money. I made this money.
Right.
You don't get to tell me what to do with the money I made. And as a parents, we have to figure that out, that yes, we always get to tell you to do what to do.
Yeah.
As you're my child, and I will tell you what to do with your money. And it's okay for you to do that.
Well, and children are smart. If you start young, they'll start to agree. Actually, over time, like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I like having money in the bank. I like not always, I like that. Hey, I saved and bought it. It feels good that way, and it feels good to give, to be generous to others.
It does.
It won't right away, but the sooner we start teaching that, the better.
It is true.
Yeah.
It's so true. And I think kids, as parents, this does not have to be a negative thing. This is a super positive thing.
It may be right at the beginning a little painful, but it's fun. I mean, it can get exciting.
It can get very exciting. And when you're, if you have young children, if you teach them to save and put it in a clear jar, and $20 crumpled up in a clear jar looks like an amazing amount of money to a small child. When you teach children, this is what we do in our family, they will grow up and not know any different. They will think, doesn't everybody do this in their family? Because you start so young.
Right.
And if you tell children, you know what, you're older now and we've totally blown it.
Yeah.
We haven't taught you how to work. We haven't taught you the value of money. We've taught you that money grows on trees because you just sit and play Nintendo games all day, eat chips, and we just give you money.
Yeah.
Now you think it's just free.
Right.
You just go to the bank and get it, and they just give it to you. And you can tell them, hey, I totally blew it.
Yeah. Yeah.
We have got to regroup and teach you a few things about money.
Yeah. And you can do that. I mean, again, that's a little more painful, but the sooner you do it, the better.
The sooner the better.
Yeah, because, again, goes back to this is about people don't want to be bound by, debt. They don't want to be bound by, hey, I'm not really worth anything, and I just, people don't really like that. It's just what we're used to, and so work ethic makes you feel good. I did this.
Yes.
Not in a prideful way, but in a way I'm a productive citizen.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And parents, those of you that have family businesses, those of you that have the ability and the privilege of having your own business, I want to really encourage you to include your children in that business. However it is, even if it's emptying the trash, keep your kids close to you in your family business. We wonder why politicians breed politicians. It's because they're around politics all the time. Their children are around politics. They hear it at the dinner table.
Right.
We wonder why contractors breed contractors. It's because if you will take the time to teach your children your trade, it doesn't mean they're going to be in the family business.
Right.
I know from my own son, my husband was a contractor, and he required that my son go with him on the weekends to work.
Sure.
And of course he started by picking up nails and sweeping the job site. That was his first job at 9 years old.
I'm still doing that. So.
But as he grew, he got more responsibility. He didn't start by framing and holding a hammer.
Right.
He started by holding the broom.
Yeah.
And as he grew, he ended up being able to frame, and now, as an adult, he can build a house.
Yeah.
He knows how to build a house. He is not a contractor, nor is he in the building business. He's a teacher. But can he still build a house?
Yeah.
He can.
Right.
And someday he will have that skill.
Yeah.
So no matter what your family business is, I just encourage you at a very young age, even if they're 2, have them start with a squirt bottle and a rag and teach them to clean the desks.
Well said. And we are done. Look at that. You were awesome. That was like perfect timing. 2, 1. We're done. Hey, thank you. That was really good. That's good. Any last parting shots? You just said it, though.
No.
All right. Work ethic for our kids is good. And Dave Ramsey's good, too.
Yes,
he's great
absolutely.
for adults, kids, and encourage you to take the course. And thank you, Lanise.
Yes.
Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Thanks. We'll see you next time.